Hello and welcome to The Great Comeback. I am your host, Holly McClain, and I'm coming to you live on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the #1 singles talk network out there. I'm a life coach and counselor, and I help people come back from big life shifts and upsets. So think big breakups, divorce, career changes, teen struggles. If it's a life transition you're going through, together, you and I will master plan your comeback. Today, life coach Julie Mast and I are talking all about letting go. Letting go of anything, everything. Your soul will tell you when it's time to let it go, clean it out, donate it, move on, separate from it, bless it, and release it. Though it sounds liberating and refreshing, and it is, it's not an easy task. And often it can be much more difficult to do than hanging on to the thing or allowing ourselves to just be buried by it and overcome with it. So Julie and I are here today to sell you on letting it go. When letting it go, of course, is the best and right thing for you in your life. We will be here to sell you on it. So here's a quick backstory for you before I bring Julie on. We're talking about this today and why it is essential for humans to learn to let it go, because about 3 years ago, Julie gave me a book and I never read it. And then it literally jumped off the shelf. Wherever it was positioned, like on the bookshelf, I grabbed it and I went, maybe it's time for me to dig into this book. I had no idea what I was in for. It's called Outrageous Openness by Tosha Silver. I've referenced it. I've made posts about it. This is like my favorite book of all time today. It has changed the trajectory of my life. And I'm not over exaggerating here, over dramatizing. But this book is about letting go. So that's why we're here today. And that's how it started. So we will dig into all of that stuff shortly. Julie, welcome back. Will you take us down the path of letting go? Where do we begin?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think what you said is so true. It's so hard. We all fight it. I think as humans, change is hard, and letting go and surrendering is a difficult path. I think what's important to realize is that it's sort of a muscle, right? It takes practice to really let control go. And that's when we're trying to control everything, oftentimes it just gets stickier and stickier, and the stories start going in our minds, and we kind of go down a rabbit hole. So kind of realizing when we need to let something go, and it definitely takes practice.
Oh my gosh, I can attest to that because I read the book. And there is a piece of the process of letting go where it is recommended that you go through your home and clean stuff out, like spring cleaning. And I moved into my home about 3 years ago, and this was post-divorce. And I moved into a bigger space than I was in before. So I kind of brought everything with me. And then on the outside, the way that everything is decorated, I wanted new, fresh energy. So I have newer things. I didn't bring a lot of stuff from my old home that I shared with my ex-husband, but I have lots of storage. And so in this storage space is, all of these things and dishes and glassware from the wedding and my wedding dress and all of this stuff. So I went on a journey. This was about 2.5 weeks ago. And I said, I am going to purge and clean. Like, I'm finally ready. It's been 4 years, about 3.5 years since I made this move into this house. So I took everything that I wanted to purge and I put it all in the garage in preparation for a big garage sale, which I did have. And that was really fun. And then did some donating as well. But something that was really important is I'd had my wedding dress boxed up. And I didn't want to let it go. And the part of me that didn't want to let it go was that I didn't want to dishonor the dress, if that makes any sense. I didn't want to just throw it in the garbage. Part of me didn't want to just donate it somewhere. I wanted to do something special with it. So long story short, what I ended up doing, a dear friend of mine is a counselor at the local high school. And I donated it to the drama department so that they could use it in a or deconstruct it and create something out of it for their production. But I had to let these things go energetically, Julie. And it was incredibly liberating. I should say that, incredibly liberating. But there were moments that I was purging from different areas in my home that I literally felt like my stomach felt kind of sick as I was doing it. Like, what was that about?
You know, when you're talking about when you got rid of something and you're trying to decide, you kind of had an angsty feeling. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was actually when I was in my office, because I have years and years of materials and tools and activities from when I was a teacher, a counselor in schools, different programs that I had toyed around with. And I mean, I had like a career lifetime of things in here that needed to be purged and expired.
Yes. I think that fear comes in from, it's sort of like your past identity you're shedding, right? It's like all this energy and love and time that you put into that part of your career, and then letting it go. I could just see your ego is probably like, well, this is what I do. This is how it works, you know? And this is so much time. And also, I think we talked about this before. Scarcity comes into play too, when you're trying to purge and let things go. This feeling of, what if I need this? What if, what if I can't find this someplace else? Or, or we have our mother's voices in our heads like, well, if your Aunt Martha comes, she's going to want to see that purple vase on your mantle, or, so you have all sorts of stuff that's sort of chirping at you. But in that case, tell me how that feels. Does that feel true to you, that maybe it was sort of this past sort of security blanket almost that you're letting go of?
Yes, it was almost like a security blanket. And I feel like all of the intellectual property and the stuff from the books that I read and the things that I listen to and the conferences that I go to, everything is really up here. And we know that this will come out as we use and want to use the tools, etc. But yeah, it was almost like a letting go. Well, what if I have a particular client and I want to reference something to bring into play? So yeah, but things were getting clogged up. So it was almost like, I will not have access to this that has been created and cultivated. And yeah, I think it was a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. And you know what, too, we can even take that a step further. And when in surrender, we're talking about sort of physical things that we surrender. And what I try to work on with my clients are sort of like emotional stuff to surrender, to like release to a higher power, to sort of create sort of a team approach to problems in your life. So, we're here and this is bothering us and we can't figure it out. And the more you think about it, the more you try to control a person in your life, a relationship in your life, it tends to go south, or your peace tends to go south for sure. And so it's releasing sort of a situation, letting go of a situation and creating that same feeling that you have with your physical belongings, but sort of creating this space for more creativity, more love, to come in and sort of steer you in that way. So it's interesting that when you give stuff up and get rid of it physically, that it kind of does the same thing. It really, really clears that heart space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought in that other piece, because that's the other half of it. There are things emotionally that we need to clear out or purge.
Yeah.
Or like you were saying, relationships that aren't serving us that we need to let go of to make room for the new. And oftentimes, like I'll talk with clients when we're dealing with relationship stuff about having their channel, their heart open to receiving love. So if they're wanting new love in their life or a new intimate relationship or whatnot, if they are busy entertaining or looking backwards at like old relationships and doing some side dating, even though it's not working out, or continuing to hang on to a relationship, their heart is cluttered and they are not open to receiving that new, fresh person that may be very right for them.
Yes.
So it applies there too.
Yeah, and I think that is the, if you're holding on to, for instance, you're in a relationship, it ended horribly. You're holding on to that pain, the anger, the jealousy, or sort of these feelings of self doubt, and all those emotions that are really heart wrenching. But if you hold on to those and keep trying to play back the situation and try to navigate that with really holding on and trying to control those emotions, it really blocks you up. So, something the listeners can do even is I've done this with my client before, and write a list of everything that you loved about the relationship and everything you wanted differently, and kind of make like a T list. And then really, really take from that relationship everything that was beautiful and worked and was really filled you up. And then the other parts, it's super clear what you don't want in your next relationship. And it's just this exercise to sort of like get it onto paper, which I'm a huge fan of. I think you are too, is getting it out on paper. And then really doing almost a ceremony of releasing all that energy, and take and hold on to the wonderful lessons and the love that you felt, but really letting go of the negative baggage, and surrendering that will totally open up so much possibility for new relationships and just more joy in your life.
I love that, because that essentially with that T chart, you get to hang on to and you get to keep the things that worked, or the lessons that were learned, or the beautiful moments that you have. But on the other side, it takes it out of your brain from ping ponging around like mother in your garage. And it puts it out on paper, and then you can let go, and you can even take it a step further and ritualize it if you want to, and take all of those items that you wrote on the paper and throw them into the fire and burn them up safely, or bury them somewhere and let them just disintegrate into the earth, and really truly let them go.
Yeah. And I think just as a little, and this show is not about forgiveness at all, but I think a component in this, specifically in this relationship, is to really release yourself and try to forgive yourself and the other person as part of that surrender process too. I think that's an important component, which is so much easier said than done, right?
It takes time. And I've noticed for myself personally, maybe my brain catches on first and I go, okay, that makes sense, Julie. Like, I know I need to let this go, and I'm letting it go. And then it takes time for it to kind of settle into your body. And essentially we call that embodiment, where you're embodying the actual thing that's in your brain, because we really want to approach whatever we're working on holistically. So we don't just want it sitting up here in our brain, but we want it to travel down where we can embody and actually really feel what that feels like.
And live it. Yeah. And people pick up on that energy too. So, I mean, I think that when you let it go, and like exactly what you said, you're sort of embodying that peaceful feeling, grounded, you end up attracting just really cool things into your life.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I always say, when it comes to relationships, when you meet someone or someone comes into your life, they're reflecting right where you're at in your life.
Yeah.
So if you're a disaster area, like I was post-divorce, early on, I was a disaster area. What do you think was swirling around in my life? Some disastrous situations.
Chaos probably.
Humans who were in disastrous situations just like mine. It was a mirror. So I knew, okay, maybe I need to back up and just kind of work on myself for now, because engaging with disaster while in my own disaster is just not serving me. So kind of letting that go. Sometimes it's just this idea of, oh my gosh, I need partnership. I'm feeling letting it go and kind of releasing it. And like the book that I'm obsessed with talks about, as you're moving forward, if you're letting go, be open to co-creating and allowing to come in what is meant to be. So whether that be co-creating with God or the universe or goddess or source, however you define it. But when you release, you're essentially open, and being open to what the universe, God, goddess, source has to kind of bring your way, and then having that clarity yourself to determine, is this something that I want to allow in? Is this something that I don't want to allow in? And there's so much clarity once you let go and clean the junk and the clutter out. It's similar to walking through your house. If it's a mess, you're tripping over things, and you can't even think straight. Like clearing it out and then being open to receiving, which is the other half of that.
Yeah. And I think that for me, that's really the definition of surrender. So me personally, when I surrender something, I usually, well, there's two things. First of all, we all know from just being the age we are, when people hit rock bottom, you have to hit rock bottom before you go up. If you have, a hard habit that you've been living with, or something's really not working for you, and you keep trying and trying for a couple of years, and finally you hit that rock bottom. The reason why people start to climb up after rock bottom is they are forced to surrender. And I think that, to me, surrendering is an invitation. And it's an invitation to God, that's what I call it, an invitation to God to enter into the situation. And that's where the magic starts to happen and the fun starts to happen. And so it's like, you come to a situation, I'm at a dead end, basically. Okay, I surrender this relationship to you. Help me, to figure out what needs to come next. And then you'll get these, the God whispers, the universal signs about where to go and what to do next, which Tosha does an excellent job, and such a great job narrating different aspects and anecdotes of her life, where when you surrender, that's where the magic happens. That's when, like, I think about it as like a basketball game. So you got to I was a basketball player. You got to get the basketball down the court. So you got to take the lead, right? And then you're in trouble. So you pass the ball off, you surrender it to God, whatever, there, and you might get a pass back, but it just makes the life move and the strategy move to get that basket, to get your end goal. You might have to do some action. It doesn't mean you surrender and let go and forget about it, but it's sort of this, it's not a passive surrender. It's sort of an active teamwork surrender.
And so harmonious. Okay, hold on, Julie.
Harmonious.
We're going to take a commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll talk further about that. Thanks. We are back with Julie Mast, and we were just talking about letting go, surrendering harmoniously, and how that can absolutely change your life. Julie, we've talked about letting go of physical things and how that can affect us emotionally in a positive way and open up space. And then we talked more abstractly about letting go of some emotional stuff and how that can open up space as well. Can you share with us a scenario or a situation where you've supported someone in this letting go process and how that worked? Because we know it's not simple, but the rewards are massive.
Yes. It's funny. I feel like so much of my coaching practice is around really teaching people to surrender, because in our day and age, it's so hard because we all want to control things. And I especially think as a mother, you see your kids doing certain things and you literally have as much as we think we have control, we have little control. And so I know, working with a client to, her daughter was making some, life choices that were going in the wrong direction. And it's just knowing what you can control and what you can't control, especially if your child is a teenager or over 18, and discerning, really living that is so hard because our nature is to protect, right? And so that was something that was difficult. And then another situation I had was a woman I was working with in the younger part of raising her kids, where it's always like, give it to God, give it to God. But she wasn't processing the emotions. So surrendering is not shoving stuff underneath the rug. You still have to process the emotion. If you're upset or sad, and if you end up saying, I'm surrendering it and not sort of addressing it, that really, really can, it might take 10 years, but it really can, what's the word I'm looking for? Collect and create a lot of pain in your life. So we talked about the difference between saying like, oh, give it to God and be done with it, and like intentionally saying, okay, I'm feeling, I can't help my child who has a learning disability, and really sitting in that kid's pain and frustration and navigating it with them, and then offering it up to a higher power. What is the best scenario for this to work through? What's the highest good for my child? Versus this is too hard. Give it to God, and gosh, no solution landed in my lap, or no peace came from this. It's sort of that, like we talked about before, it's sort of that teamwork of like knowing where you have free will and you need to take action, but then really surrendering, to a higher power and listening to the God cues that come afterwards. I don't know if it's hard to explain.
It does. It makes sense. It starts to get a little murky, and I've been practicing meditation and such, and I am well versed in learning to listen to the whispers and all of the things. But like, how would we define that for listeners who are not familiar with that process of, essentially it's tapping and tuning into your intuition, right? Like that gut feeling.
Getting in tune with the gut feeling. And then I think a big thing is really expecting an answer, which sounds outlandish to somebody who's not used to this sort of communication or this sort of existence in this world where we're relying on a higher power. But so let me give an example to make it a little more. So you don't know, like, if you should quit a job, or, if you should quit or move on. And there's we're trying to control it and figure it out. And it's just, there's no clarity, right? So making that intention to give it up. And then you need to start really opening your heart and your eyes, your mind, your ears for anybody, because the universe works through the Holy Spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, works in many different ways and facets. So, look for a road sign that's significant to you. Listen to a conversation that someone's having with you, that they randomly drop the name of a company that you've actually been sort of thinking about. And then when you drive to work that day, you see a billboard with that company name on it. That type of synchronicity. Yeah, you've got to really look for it. because it as much as sometimes it does drop in your lap, it's that active participation in the relationship. You have to look for it and feel it, right? Like you said, those little God whispers, sometimes it's a gut feeling. Sometimes it's literally passing by somebody. They're having a conversation with somebody else, but what they're saying is super significant to you in your path. So it becomes this sort of magical existence. I think everybody should live this way, right?
It's a very cool way to take in information and make a decision or contemplate something. When I started doing this early on, it became like what you had said. I'd see a little something, and if I'm inspired to think that it could be a sign, it probably is a little sign. And my attempt to interpret that sign is me tapping into my own little guidance inside or my intuition and coming up with an interpretation. So that in essence is you exercising that additional sense that we have, that intuitive sense.
That is such a good word, is exercise. So that's one thing I do with my clients is I take them into meditation and try to get them to come up with like a sign that is kind of a steering point. So like my daughter's is a blue butterfly. Mine was an orange car for a long time. That's what came to me. And it's amazing. Like when an orange car shows up or, I'm trying to think of what other clients have come up with. But helping them to find something that the universe sort of is showing them. One of my clients was an owl. That was sort of her sign. So it's finding that it's kind of giving a language that you can communicate, with God or universe, whatever. So that's super fun. And that kind of exercises that muscle.
I love that. And I had heard of this before. I haven't done this myself. I've done other things, but one thing that you can look for as a sign is the shape of a heart out in nature. Did you share that with me or did someone else share?
That's my mom's. And I've got to tell you, my mom, she has a whole collection of like shaped hearts and pictures and stuff. And so that's definitely.
That one I love because you can go on a walk or just be walking through a parking lot and you might see a rock that's shaped like a heart or something.
Clouds or a tree bark or
Exactly. And that you can tell yourself, okay, this will be my validation that there's something more at play here and that my intuition is at work and the co-creation between me and the natural world or me and God or me and the universe is showing up for me as a heart in nature, love in nature. That's a really fun one. So I think our listeners, if you want to give that a try, give that a try. For me, I came up with years ago that when I see a feather, it is a sign that I'm on the right path because I had a lot of self-doubts that I'd struggled with and I needed some sense of direction. And I will tell you, I see multiple feathers a day. And I work from home, so it's not like I'm really out and about all the time.
Awesome.
Multiple feathers a day. And sometimes if I see them, I'll collect them and I'll just like put them in a little spot in my home or whatnot.
But I love that.
Huge. And it just brings a lot of connection to you and your world. And that's part of you being a natural animal and connecting to your natural world and tapping in and tuning into something bigger than yourself and your own internal guidance. I mean, there are a lot of neat things that you can do with that. In particular, my mom, her sister, my aunt, had passed away about 3 years ago, and her name, my aunt, is my Aunt Penny. And so my mom has her little symbol or sign as a penny that her sister is present and with her or saying hello. And I don't find pennies anywhere. And my mom finds pennies everywhere. It's her thing. And it's just really neat because it keeps you tuned in and tied in.
And it makes you feel loved and protected and watched. Like it has this, to me, I feel such love and protection from my, signs. And when I find them, it's just, it's encouraging,
So we've actually kind of swirled the conversation around, but I think that there's a lot of richness in it. We started off our conversation today with letting go and how healthy and important that is in your life when there are things that you actually do need to let go of, or emotions or ties that you need to let go of. And then we swirled into tapping into our intuition and feeling within our own internal guidance system, which is equally as important. But before we have to go, I want to share the books that I'm in love with. So Tosha's book that you sent to me, Julie, is Outrageous Openness, which I love. And it gets you into this concept of letting go. And once you've let go, co-creating. It takes all the stress and the pressure and the hustle off of you to go make it happen. You're letting go and releasing and co-creating with what's beautiful and what's coming in. And then, do you have this one, Julie? It's Not Your Money. It's called It's Not Your Money.
Yeah, I have I do. I actually have not finished that. I started it and then I hadn't finished it, but we should book club it.
This one, yes, this one is amazing. And It's Not Your Money, isn't simply about it's not your money. It's not your money. It's not your house. It's not your things. It's not your person. It's, it's radical letting go, right? It's not your thing. So 2 incredible books.
I
Julie,
love her.
Thank you for coming again and having this chat and sharing your expertise with us. Will you share how listeners can get in touch with you, please?
Yes, at just juliegmast.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Thanks so much, Julie. And thank you to our listeners for joining us in the conversation today. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching support as you navigate your personal comeback, reach out to me by visiting hollymcclaincoaching.com. And a final thank you to Cece, an amazing producer who works her magic on the back end to make this show possible. Join me again next time. Have a great rest of your week and be well.
Thank you.
Thanks.